What's going on, everyone? So the last time we saw Sidney Prescott was in Scream 5. She wasn't in Scream 6. And we know that she is back for Scream 7. And this is supposed to be a more Sidney-focused, driven film. Based on rumors, again, always take that stuff with a grain of salt. But based on rumors, this is kind of supposed to be like a split film. Part of it, like half of it, is supposed to be focused and centered around Sidney Prescott. The other half is centered around a new group of characters, which you got to imagine that the idea is to not stop, is to kind of rewrite the ship. So if you do develop some quality characters that audiences buy into, and you kind of, build a new foundation, maybe you continue kind of have like the Sidney Prescott right off into the sunset type film, and then this new group of characters, whoever survives, ends up carrying over into maybe a new trilogy or something. We'll see. Look, I'm always for Scream. Obviously, they're kind of in this weird, awkward place right now, but it also is very exciting, right? Like, because there is a lot of unknown. There is a lot of mystery. Like, what is going to happen? How are they going to approach this film? So, hopefully, they take advantage of that. Hopefully, they utilize that properly and give us a quality film. But in Scream 5, something that they introduced to us was Sidney having children. Obviously, in Scream 5, they were incredibly young, and so making a film centered around Sidney's kids is very likely not going to happen for Scream 7, unless they do something that I mentioned in a previous video, which is, what if they pick up, instead of picking up and having this be like a Scream 7, where they pick up after Scream 6, what if they basically say, hey, Scream 5 and 6 are kind of their own thing, pick up after Scream 3? Because Scream 4, she didn't have kids, so I don't think that this idea would work. But what if you just, hey, Scream 4 has always kind of been its own standalone, kind of its own thing. It was supposed to be the first of a new direction. It was supposed to be the first of a new trilogy. Fortunately, Wes Craven, rest in peace. It didn't work out. And then they ultimately, you have Radio Silence take over, and here we are, right? So what if they were just like, hey, Scream 5 and 6, that's its own duo. Scream 4 has always kind of been a standalone, so like, let's let it just continue to be a standalone. And then you pick up after Scream 3 with Sidney Prescott and Mark Kincaid married, and they have children, and you have this film centered around Sidney's children. That could explain why Sidney is involved, because maybe Sidney's children are a target because Ghostface maybe wants to go after Sidney, or wants to be the people that kill Sidney's kids, right? And because of Sidney's past and because of Sidney's life, which is probably how this is going to unfold anyway, now her children are in jeopardy. And now Mark Kincaid and Sidney have to figure out how to keep her children safe, keep her daughter safe. And like, you could even spin that off into more films with like Sidney's daughter, and maybe Sidney as cameo and whatnot, right? Like, it could be kind of like the passing of the torch. But again, you wouldn't be able to do it if it was Scream 7, because you're talking like a year or two later and all her children are young. However, if you picked up after Scream 3, you're talking Scream 3 came out in 2000, right? So talking 24 years, you could easily have Sidney's kids be 17, maybe just turn 18, right? Like, they don't even have to be in high school or anything. I mean, technically, you could have her kid be in her 20s, right? But most likely, you probably want them to be kind of like what the core four's age is. Maybe it's like senior year of high school, right? Go that route. Or maybe it's like the first year of college or something. Go like the college campus route, which people really like. But the point is like, if you pick it up from Scream 3, you could keep you could have Sidney's kids be the main focus, because you could now justify and explain them being the age that they are in the film, right? Which would be 16 to whatever. Because even if, let's say, they're 16 or 17, right? Yeah, it's been 24 years, probably 25 years by the time. But just because Sidney and Kincaid get together doesn't mean that Sidney had kids immediately. Right? Like, so you could say like, hey, they were happily married for 6 years or whatever before they had their first child. Or maybe they have 2 kids, right? Maybe they have like an older brother and a sister, and you kind of go like the Sam and Tara. Like, you could do a Sidney-esque version, which is also something a lot of people wanted for Scream 5. A lot of people wanted hey, can we do like maybe a film with Sydney's children? Maybe she has children now or whatever, right? Because it was 10 years or whatever, and you could maybe say because Kincaid wasn't in Scream 4, right? So it's something that I think you could get away with. And I think many people would enjoy and kind of look past, because I understand and I am kind of in that camp too of like, I'd rather keep the cohesion, keep the timeline, because like the beauty of Scream is it doesn't have to get convoluted. Like you look at like Halloween and it's like you need basically a spreadsheet just to figure out which lines up where, what film is what, and how is this all playing out. So like I get you don't want to you want to keep things focused and in order, but this is also a position that the studios didn't expect to be in. This is a position that that they are now having to figure out, navigate, and I think if at the end of the day, good writing, good storytelling, good films trump everything. And so if you have a really good Scream movie, are people really going to be like, man, that was great, but I hate that? No, you can look past it. Will there be some people? Probably. I mean, there's always people that are going to find something, but I just think if you tell a good story, you keep the Kincaid and Sydney thing together, you introduce the children, that could be the reason Sydney now gets involved and has to step up, right? There's been all this peace and quiet. Because again, if you pick up after Scream 3, you could say there's been peace and quiet for 20 plus years. So she thinks she's out of the woods. She thinks everything is good. She's happily married, has her kids, living the white picket fence life. And then boom, here comes another Ghostface. Picking it right back up to target her kids and a new generation. And now you got that story. And then you could have her children basically be the main focus the rest of the way. And you could probably suck out 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 films. And yeah, like you'd have Scream 4 as like a standalone, kind of its own thing. Scream 5 and 6 kind of be its own thing. I know to like newer audiences, it might be a little confusing because Sydney is in 2 of those 3 movies, right? She was in 4, she was in 5. But again, like, I just think you could kind of let those be its thing. You have this continued story from Scream 3. And I really do think that, like, because look, the casual audience, right? The general audience, they're not going to care. They're not following Scream that closely anyway, like we are. Right? Like you watching this video right now, you're somebody that is passionate enough to look up Scream stuff and kind of get all the details and talk about rumors and things like that. The general casual audience, they're just going to see the film because it's Ghostface and it's a slasher and they want to see what happens, right? They want to see, they want to be scared and see some, awesome kills, right? That's how it goes. And, the percentage of us that do care, yes, it's like, man, like now we got this like spin-off timeline, but again, if it's a great movie, tells a great story, has Sidney Prescott, you start checking off the boxes. It's like, all right, like, you could make this make sense. I don't want like a rehash of Sidney's story or whatever, but I would like to see some type of like, passing of the torch almost. Tell the Sidney story, have whatever. I mean, although you could argue it would be tough, but look, there are rumors that they want to continue with Sydney. Like if this film goes well, maybe make a couple more. Maybe you get a new trilogy out of it, right? Like I'm not going to complain about more Scream movies if I can get them. I mean, obviously from a content creator standpoint, you're probably like Fate. Like, well, yeah, you make Scream content. So, of course you want Scream movies. But even as just a fan, like I am a fan. That's why I started making videos about Scream, right? So to me, it's like, if you can make it work, why not? Right? Because you got to do something. You got to kind of, I mean, I want them to go back to basics and keep it simple. Like, I don't want some crazy, convoluted, just like trying to big brain stuff that doesn't need big brain, right? Like, to me, just kind of get back to what made Scream successful. Get back to what made Scream great. Like, stop with the rehashes, stop with the remakes, right? Tell a new story, tell something good. And I just think you could do that with Sydney's children, right? Like, you have a built-in inherent reason for everything now, right? Like, and then Aunt Gail, guess what? She's coming to help. You could also have Dewey back, right? Like, you could have literally everybody. You could have Dewey, Gail, and Sidney back. Mark Kincaid. Sidney's kids are there. Ghostface shows up, targets her children, so she has to get involved. Dewey and Gail aren't just going to stand idly by and watch as Sidney and her children are being targeted. So then they show up and they try to help and save the day. And now you have the beginning of what could be a new trilogy, right? You could even set up to where it's like, maybe you have a cliffhanger at the end or whatever, right? Like, there's just a lot I believe you could do if you were to go that direction, right? Because the problem with like picking up from Scream 6 is like, how do you, like, it's just a lot you have to explain now. It's like, well, where are the core four? Why, like, Sidney's involved? Why aren't the core four helping Sidney? Right? Why aren't they involved? Now, does this happen simultaneously with Scream 6? So, like, maybe while Sidney's being attacked, is at the same time that, you know, the core four were being attacked? So maybe that's the explanation. But it's just, there's a lot that's kind of like going to be kind of awkward and like, how do you kind of approach? Do you just kind of pretend like that stuff didn't, and if that's the case, then you might as well just cut it out entirely, right? It's just like, I don't know. I just, and then Scream 4, like I said, it's kind of always been its standalone thing. And I mean, it never like referenced or like a real point in these other films. Like, to me, it's just like, it sucks that you have 3 films that aren't in this timeline, you know, or I guess, you know, it depends on how you want to branch it, right? But I don't know. I like the idea. I don't, you know, I'm not saying that they have to do it. I'm not saying like, you know, it's the best idea, but like if they were to do something like that, I'd be game. Anyway, as always, this is a discussion. Pass question to you. Let me know your thoughts and opinions down in the comments below. What do you think? How do you feel? Do you agree? Do you think that, hey, you know, like, whatever you got to do, have Sidney and her kids involved? Do you think, no, you got to keep the continuity, you got to keep the timeline, which I do get, I do understand. You know, I've talked heavily about how, like, you know, I don't want this to turn into like a Halloween or anything like that. I just think given the circumstances, I think you can kind of justify it, right? You're not doing this necessarily because you wanted to, you're doing this because you kind of have to type thing. You know, because that's the beauty of Scream. Is Ghostface, he's not Michael Myers. He's not Freddy Krueger. Where when they die, like, that's it, right? Now you gotta make a new reboot. Where Ghostface is always somebody different. So anyway, again, love to hear it down in the comments below. That being said, if you haven't liked this video, hit that like button. Helps me a lot. Let's enjoy these types of videos, and I truly appreciate it. Not subscribed to the channel, what are you doing? Hit that subscribe button, turn on the bell notifications. Appreciate y'all. See you in the next one. Thank you.